All right, AP Wielders, welcome to day 4 of the new normal homeschool. Going to do Russia today. I'm also going to upload a test. It'll be the transatlantic economy through the Industrial Revolution. It will be open note, so I'm not going to do a audio podcast. You can be open note, open book. There are a couple questions that have pictures and maps that may not come through. If they do, don't worry about them. Don't worry about it. Everyone will get credit for those. But just take that when you get a chance. And also, during my office hours, if not before, send me an email so I can send you the Google Classroom link. A couple people have already done it. So thank you for that, guys. And we did some troubleshooting, and we can get this thing up and running. And again, my office hours will be from 1 to 3 daily, more if needed. And I will post some announcements on the Google Classroom. So today we're going to hit nationalism in Russia. And I know we spoke a little bit about it yesterday, but we want to keep on going here, and just to make sure I get to the point where we were yesterday, I'm just going to start over. So what we have, by the year 1800, Russia is the largest and the most densely populated country in Europe. And one of the things Russia is blessed with is it has a lot of natural resources, things that are necessary for, oh wait a minute, we did do this. I do remember this. I'm sorry about that. We're going to pop ahead. We've gone all the way to where Tsar Nicholas realizes that things are terrible. And we have a couple czars, and these guys just didn't do a very good job whatsoever. Napoleon's invasion is going to change Tsar Alexander's mind about making reforms. Once he sees what happens with Napoleon, he decides that he's going to crush any action that would threaten his monarchy. And then he dies. And as he dies, he calls in his son, Nicholas I, and he says, "Son, I wanted the best for you, but it didn't happen. I am leaving you the state in a very poor state indeed. Sorry about that. I'm leaving you the country to take over, and it is in a very, very, very sad state." And then he dies. And so his son, Nicholas I, is like, "Thanks, Dad. Freaking great. Awesome. This is what I really much need. Country is much bad, and you're leaving it in much sad state. Awesome." And at this time, a group of soldiers are going to lead the Decembrist revolt on December 19th, demanding some reforms. Well, Tsar Nicholas ain't having this. "Thanks, Dad, for leaving me things in bad shape." So he reacts by brutally putting down this rebellion. And when he does, and he gets rid of his military officers, he puts the clamp on any outside, especially Western influence whatsoever. And he's going to reintroduce the secret police, like Ivan the Terrible of old, to suppress anybody who threatened his power and authority. Nicholas is a throwback, maybe to his ancient ancestor Peter. And so Nicholas is going to want to build Russia on what he calls 3 pillars. The 3 pillars to reassert Russian absolutism. Number 1 is orthodoxy. Control the relationship and the message coming out of the Russian Orthodox Church. Once you control the hearts and the minds of the people, they will begin to listen to you and buy into what you are doing. Number 2, autocracy, the absolute, unquestioned power of the Russian government and its czar, Nicholas I. And number 3, nationalism. Right? Be proud of what is Russian, from borscht and vodka to nesting dolls to Fabergé eggs. Love it. Enjoy it. And just like an old ruler, any group that disagrees with Tsar Nicholas is going to be eliminated. However, Nicholas does see that he's got to modernize his country. He's got to move it forward. It's 200 years behind the rest of Western Europe. Like, Russia is still feudal while everyone else is modernizing with the Industrial Revolution. Problem is, he could not think of a way to do it without upsetting the boyars. Those pesky Russian nobles are always in the way. And then things really begin to go wrong, right? They get involved in the Crimean War. And in the middle of the Crimean War, Tsar Nicholas is going to die in 1855. And on his deathbed, he tells his son, Alexander II, all right, pretty much the same thing he heard from his dad. I wanted to take everything difficult, everything serious upon my shoulders, and leave you a very peaceful, well-ordered, and happy realm. However, Providence has decreed otherwise. Now I go to pray for Russia and for you all. You are getting a state in very poor condition, very poor indeed. And his son, Alexander, says, like, seriously, Dad? I heard some kind of story, I don't even know if it's true, that Grandpa said that to you, and now you're giving me this? I want to take everything hard upon my shoulders and leave you a happy, peaceful realm, sunshine and rainbows, but I'm leaving you a country that sucks, and it's very poor indeed, and we're in the middle of a war, and, well, I'm going to die. And so with this, the new Tsar, Alexander II, now knows that reforms were not only possible, but now they're necessary. Nobody can say no. We just got beaten in the Crimean War by the Ottoman Empire, by England, and by France. And so seeing this debacle, Alexander says, okay, at long last, finally, I can make some of these reforms. Many of my people have been demanding it, but now I am going to do it. And so in 1861, and to put in context, this is right at the beginning of the United States Civil War, he announces the end to the centuries-old policy of serfdom in Russia. There are going to be no more peasants on the manor. And everyone hears this and they're like, okay, what's next? But the people who are really angry are the boyars. What? How are we going to get our work done now? But it is almost like the Emancipation Proclamation where President Lincoln will free all the slaves deep in the South, where the federal government had no power. What does this mean for the people who are freed? All right, the peasants are no longer peasants, but what does this mean? And the process is long and it is difficult. The serfs are given some land, all right, but much of it was too small, all right. Yeah, they could live there and they could farm, but there wasn't enough to feed their families, let alone pay any taxes. Plus, they didn't get the land for free. They had a 50-year mortgage to pay for. You're going to give me this crappy little plot of land where I can barely, keep myself alive, and I've got to pay for it? This sucks. This is a terrible idea. We thought things were going to be better. This is just absolutely awful. That's not good. No. Yet. And so this increases the anger that people feel towards their government. And getting rid of serfdom also means at the same time that the Russian government has to reorganize itself. Who's going to be the governmental workers? If we're trying to get rid of the boyars, which we are trying to do, they're the ones who collected taxes and looked after their towns and kept justice and provided education and made sure that roads and bridges were passable. Well, now that's all gone. And in Russia, they're going to create a thing known as a zemstrovo. A zemstrovo is someone who oversaw everything, kind of like a city manager or a town mayor. They have to do this job. They're also going to have to learn how to create some type of new judicial system to try and punish criminals or things that people do wrong. So we've got these little city councils, maybe of old boyars, maybe of like artisans or peasants. Nobody really knows what's going on. And in the meantime, we're going to open up industry from the West. Young men and young women were once again sent westward, like Peter the Great had done. Go learn, go find things out, learn about industry in Germany, learn about industry in France and England, and then come back and bring these ideas to Russia. And they do, but very few of them are ever going to work out. It's almost like a repeat of what happened to the great ancestor Peter the Great. And the problems with reform here, and this is kind of funny, when he tries all this stuff, when you try something new, it's almost like the collapse of the Soviet Union with Mikhail Gorbachev. Everyone expects things to get better overnight. And when they don't, what do? The people have all these high hopes and expectations, especially among the young people, among the students and other intellectuals, right? Students, young people always buy onto these things, and college professors. And when this doesn't happen, in the 1870s, they begin to form a movement known as populism. And populism will become like a grassroots, totally organic level movement that believed in all people should be equal. A lot of people think that Frank Baum's story, The Wizard of Oz, is about populism, where the Tin Man is the industrial worker and the Scarecrow is the unemployed farmer and Dorothy symbolizes hope and the Wizard of Oz is the president or something, and the Wicked Witch and her flying monkeys are the evil forces keeping everything at bay, trying to keep the old social class order. Well, in any event, populism will coalesce and they will form a movement known as land and freedom, right, where people are going to be given land and their freedom. And this comes just shortly after Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels published the Communist Manifesto. And the land and freedom movement staged a revolution founded on the communal life, where everybody is going to go out and we are going to work together and we are going to share our resources and we're going to help one another out. And it sounds awesome. Right? But things are going to go wrong. These students are going to go out among the Russian peasants who make up the largest section, the bulk of Russian society, and they're going to work with them and they're going to hang out with them and they're going to begin to teach them to gain their trust and prepare them for the upcoming revolution. Now, think about this, all right? You take a city slicker, a young kid, a lax bro, right, with his hemp necklace and going like bruh and lit and facts and that slaps, and you take him out into a rural community, they're going to be like, what? Who's this punk? Who's this little city slicker coming in here in his Jeep Wrangler and his hemp necklace and his mullet going, facts, lit, bruh, that's awesome. Nobody is going to listen. They're going to distrust them. What are you city slickers doing here? So when the young students go out and try and ingratiate themselves with the peasant population, the peasants call the police. And all of the students are rounded up. But Tsar Alexander wants to set a precedent. He doesn't arrest them. He doesn't throw them in prison. The penalties are very light. A few ringleaders are punished pretty harsh. But he says, guys, I'm going to let you go, but don't you, so help me God, do this ever again. You get one freebie, and then I'm dropping the hammer on you. All right? If you do it again, the penalties are going to be heavy. And so after this, the land and freedom movement splits apart. Some people just throw in the towel. But left are the radicals, the people who are just hardcore into it. Now they're even more fierce. And so they will form a government called the People's Will. It is the will of the people that we will become free. And their main goal is to overthrow the Tsar. And they decide the only way to do this was to assassinate him. All right, we are going to have to kill him. So in March of 1881, after several attempts, all right, that were, botched, Molotov cocktails thrown at his carriages and bounce off and things don't work. In 1881, Tsar Alexander is finally assassinated. And poor Alexander is known for two things. One, his attempts at reform and how they didn't work. And number two, the major opposition it built against him. So the seeds of defeat for the Romanov dynasty are coming. Problem is, when you assassinate Alexander II, now you unleash someone even more terrible. Alexander III. He is furious. And after quickly tracking down and finding his father's assassins, he reacts swiftly and brutally and has them executed. He says, fine, if this is the way you guys want to play, if this is the way you want to do it, if this is the way you're going to treat my dad, then take this. He immediately repeals all of his dad's reforms. He then decides to increase the power of the Tsar by re-centralizing the government. Those Zemstrovos were a good idea, but now we're going back old school. This is how we are going to do it. He strengthens his secret police, unleashes them on his people, conspirator real or imagined. Anybody who speaks out, they are visited and they are done. And his goal is to get rid of everything non-Russian. The cultures of non-Russian people will be suppressed. And he says, in Russia, we are going to have one language, one church, and one government. This is how we are going to do it. One language, one church, and one government. It's going back to the three pillars. This is how we do it. Now, what this does is it confirms in the minds of his opponents that Russia can't have an absolute monarch anymore. The time has come for a change. It is a battle of wills. And so Tsar Alexander is going to lead his family. He's going to speed up the process for the doom of the Romanov dynasty. And so now that we're done with nationalism in Europe, nationalism is going to have a large effect. The reforms in Germany and Italy caused a realigning of the power structure of Central Europe. Old school empires like the Austrian Habsburg Empire are weakened. The Ottoman Empire and Russia are weakened. They feel the negative effects of nationalism. However, nationalism is truly going to reverberate around the world during this period. The United States was experiencing our nationalist bout with the Great Civil War between the North and the South. And nationalism is also going to show up in Asia, what we're going to talk about tomorrow. But what we have is the three big Central and Eastern empires, Austria, Germany, and Russia, like I said before, all have large numbers of ethnic Poles. And two other groups that want to pursue their own country's nationalism. They're going to begin to weaken and cause problems in Central and Southern Europe. And these populations are going to have an effect on each of the three empires, Austria, Germany, and Russia, and it's going to lead to World War I and many of these governments being overthrown. So kind of a short one today. We're going to talk about the Ottoman Empire. We're going to talk about nationalism in China and Japan coming up, and then we will head to imperialism. If you need anything, guys, give me a shout.